Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my top 24 ranked players for the 2023 fantasy football season. Now, I say this in every single video, but we are only in March right now. The NFL draft has not happened yet, so things are going to potentially change drastically from now all the way up until late August or early September when you actually do your fantasy football drafts. But for now, this is a preliminary look at my top 24 players for the 2023 fantasy football season. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my top 24 ranked players for the 2023 fantasy football season. We begin at number 1 with Justin Jefferson, wide receiver of the Minnesota Vikings. Last year, he was the wide receiver number 1 in half PPR and the wide receiver number 2 in half PPR points per game, playing in 17 games on the season. He had a grand total of 184 targets, 10.8 per game. Number 1 at wide receiver, 128 receptions, 7.5 per game. Number 1 at wide receiver, 1,809 receiving yards, 106.4 per game. Number 1 at wide receiver, and 9 total touchdowns. Number 4 at wide receiver. Now, the team does end up losing Adam Thielen, who goes to the Carolina Panthers. Will that have a large effect on Justin Jefferson? Probably not, because they're just going to bring in someone else to be the wide receiver number 2 on the team, or KJ Osborne can elevate himself into that role. Obviously, they also have TJ Hawkinson. Now, Justin Jefferson is an incredibly safe pick. I do understand that people do not like Kirk Cousins, right? Kirk Cousins isn't the hottest quarterback on earth, right? He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not this. He's not that. But ultimately, Kirk Cousins is good enough to feed the rock to Justin Jefferson, and I think he is very safe to be the number 1 overall pick in a ton of fantasy football drafts this year. At number 2, we have Ja'Marr Chase, wide receiver of the Cincinnati Bengals, wide receiver number 12 on the season in 2022, wide receiver number 5 in half PPR points per game. Now, the reason why he didn't finish as highly on the season is because he only played in 12 games, which is, again, something I talk about in a lot of videos, why we talk so heavily about the points per game number, because it is more telling on how good Ja'Marr Chase actually was on the season. Playing in 12 games, like I said, 134 targets, 11.2 per game, number 14 at wide receiver, 87 receptions, 7.3 per game, 12th at wide receiver, 1,046 receiving yards, 87.2 per game, 16th, and 9 total touchdowns, number 4 at wide receiver, tied with Justin Jefferson. So the biggest reason as to why I have Justin Jefferson ranked ahead of Ja'Marr Chase is not necessarily skill set, because I do generally believe both of these guys are two of the most talented wide receivers in the NFL. It all has to do with their situation. Now, I know Ja'Marr Chase has Joe Burrow, Joe Shiesty, Joe Burrow, the better quarterback, but ultimately, Ja'Marr Chase is in a much more crowded room. He has Titty Boy T. Higgins. He has Tyler Boyd. He now also has a tight end that they ended up bringing in from the Minnesota Vikings. So there are other weapons around Ja'Marr Chase, whereas Justin Jefferson is the key focal point in the Minnesota Vikings offense. If you want to argue that Ja'Marr Chase is a better player than Justin Jefferson, go right ahead. But for me, Ja'Marr Chase is the number 2 player, and Justin Jefferson is number 1. At number 3, these first two guys, pretty young, Justin Jefferson and Ja'Marr Chase. We got a little bit more of an old head here. Tyreek the Freak Hill of the Miami Dolphins, wide receiver number 2 last season in half PPR, wide receiver number 3 in half PPR points per game, doing all of that with Tua, Skylar Thompson, as well as Teddy Bridgewater. 17 games played on the season, 170 targets, 10 targets per game. Number 3 at wide receiver, 119 receptions, 7 per game. Number 2 at wide receiver, 1,710 receiving yards, 100.6 receiving yards per game. Number 2, 9 total touchdowns. Number 4 at wide receiver. So again, there are concerns when it comes to Tua Tagovailoa. Some people will throw the injury-prone moniker on him, but ultimately, if Tua Tagovailoa is able to play the full 17 games in 2023, it should be a shock to absolutely no one when Tyreek Hill dominates in fantasy football. Yet again, people told me going into last year without Patrick Mahomes, the guy can't do it. He was putting up numbers with Skylar Thompson and Teddy Bridgewater. So even if Tua was to get hurt, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, Magic Mike White could come in and Tyreek Hill will be just fine. I'm very excited for Tyreek in the second year of this Mike McDaniel system. At number 4, we have Christian McCaffrey, running back of the San Francisco 49ers, RB2.5 PPR last year, running back number 2 in points per game as well, playing in 17 games, which for some people was a reason why they might have wanted to fade Christian McCaffrey, because they thought, oh, he's only going to play in a couple of games next year, Nick. He's 2022, he's going to miss like 5 games, and he plays the whole fucking year for the Panthers and the 49ers. 244 carries, number 9 at running back, 1,139 rushing yards, number 7 at running back, 107 targets, 6.3 per game, number 2 at running back, 741 receiving yards, 43.6 per game, number 1 at running back, and 13 total touchdowns, number 3 at running back. Now, the quarterback situation in San Francisco right now is up in the air. A report even came out today as I'm recording things that Sam Darnold and Trey Lance are going to split the first team reps in training camp in the offseason. How true could that really be? Like, Sam Darnold is garbage, so that doesn't really make too much sense. But that's what's coming out right now. I think regardless of who the quarterback is, you, the viewer, me, I could go out there and play quarterback, and Christian McCaffrey will be just fine. I am slightly worried, though, about a potential pullback in terms of his workhorse role. Like, I'm not 100% sure that he's going to be one of those guys that is playing 90-95% of snaps like we know Christian McCaffrey can, right? I think they're going to want to utilize other running backs behind him. Now, the 49ers offense is so good that it shouldn't really matter, but that is kind of a worry that I have right now when it comes to Christian McCaffrey. At number 5, we have Austin Eckler, running back of the LA Chargers, at least for right now. There was talk about him requesting a trade. Will he be a Charger? Will he not be a Charger? Still pretty up in the air. Running back number 1 in half PPR last season, running back number 1 in half PPR points per game, playing in the full 17 games on the season, having 204 carries, 12.0 per game, number 28 running back, 915 rushing yards, 53.8 per game, number 17 at running back. So his rushing stats, nothing amazing, nothing awful, but nothing amazing. But this man makes his bread, his butter. He makes everything in the receiving game. 128 targets, something light, right? 7.5 per game, number 1 at running back, 107 receptions, 6.3 per game. Number 1 at running back, 722 receiving yards, 42.5 per game, number 2 at running back, and 18 fucking touchdowns. 18 total touchdowns, number 1 at running back. Again, regardless of what offense he's in, for all kind of sense of an argument here, all intents and purposes, we'll say he's on the Chargers. Herbert's going to dump him off the ball. This is a guy that is a playmaker. You put the ball in his hands, and he can do crazy things with it. He could take a ball that was dumped off at their own 20-yard line and take it all the way in for an 80-yard touchdown. One of the best running backs in the NFL. And honestly, if I knew what team he was going to be on, I might rank him ahead of Christian McCaffrey. At number 6, we have Cooper Kupp, wide receiver of the LA Rams, wide receiver 24 in half PPR last year, wide receiver 1 in half PPR points per game, playing in 9 total games. Last season, he had 98 targets, 10.9 per game, number 34 at wide receiver, only played in 9 games, though, so that is important to note. That's why his numbers at wide receiver are pretty low. 75 receptions, 8.3 per game, number 23, 812 receiving yards, 90.2 per game, 33 at wide receiver, and 7 total touchdowns. This man scored 7 touchdowns in 9 games, number 14 at wide receiver. So again, I know the perception right now of the LA Rams is pretty bad, right? Matthew Stafford was putrid. He stunk to high heaven last season, but ultimately, he's coming back, and it doesn't take the second coming of Dan Marino to throw the ball to Cooper Kupp and for him to have a fantastic season. Though I will note, the fact that Matthew Stafford is going into the year probably still injured, the fact that this Rams team feels dumbed down, it feels significantly worse, it feels like they're going to continue on that Super Bowl hangover, makes me less likely to have Cooper Kupp ranked higher come August. I mean, the guy's just fantastic, though, so it's hard to rank him anywhere outside the top 6, in my opinion. At number 7, we have Stephon Diggs of the Buffalo Bills, wide receiver number 4 in half PPR, wide receiver 6 in half PPR points per game, playing in 17 games on the season. He had 155 targets, 9.1 per game, number 5 at wide receiver, 110 receptions, 6.5 per game, number 3 at wide receiver, 1,455 receiving yards, 85.6 per game, number 5 at wide receiver, and 11 total touchdowns, number 2 at the wide receiver position. So when it comes comes to the Buffalo Bills, obviously they're kind of known at this point as playoff chokers. They get to the playoffs, they have all these games. They're a team that entering into every season, or at least over the last couple of years, they've been one of the top 3, top 5 Super Bowl favorites, and then they choke on a big one like their name is Mia Malkova in the playoffs. Ultimately, though, the playoffs don't matter for fantasy football. Josh Allen's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Stephon Diggs is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. It is a no-brainer to have him ranked inside of the top 10, though I think there could be some type of argument to make that you might want to draft number 8, my number 8 player, Travis Kelce, tight end of the Kansas City Chiefs, ahead of Stephon Diggs, tight end number 1.5 PPR last year, tight end 1.5 PPR points per game. I'm sure without even looking that up, everyone knew that who has been playing fantasy football, that Travis Kelce is an absolute fucking behemoth. 17 games played, 152 targets, 8.9 per game, number 1 at tight end, 110 receptions, 6.5 per game, number 1, 1,338 receiving yards, 78.7 per game, number 1, and 12 total tugs, number 1 at tight end. Travis Kelce continues to year in and year out absolutely make the other tight ends look foolish. And unlike years in the past, I really don't think you can make any debate on who the number 1 tight end is. In the past, you could say, oh, Kittle, Andrews, this, that, and the other thing. But now we don't know what's going to happen with Lamar. Lamar seems like he's going to be gone from Baltimore. So can you rank Andrews that highly? Are you going to be crazy enough to say, oh, maybe TJ Hawkinson can pass Travis Kelce? I'm not going to be like that. While I do find it difficult at points to press the draft button on Travis Kelce before, say, pick 10, 11, or 12, I get it. The guy is the clear number 1 tight end on the best offense in the National Football League. Don't overthink things. Travis Kelce is going to be fantastic yet again in 2023. If you want more fantasy football content for your 2023 fantasy football season, you want to win your league, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below if you're new. Whether you are new or not, make sure you hit that like button down below. And let me know if there's any players in the comment section that you disagree with. Maybe you think Nick Stephon Diggs should be ranked higher, or Nick Cooper Kupp, he got hurt last year, Stafford, this, that, and the other thing. He should not even be a top 6 guy. Let me know in the comment section. At number 9, we move to Bijan Robinson, free agent technically because he hasn't been drafted yet. Draft's coming up, knocking on the door of the draft. He played 3 years at Texas from 2020 to 2022. I racked up back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons, 2022, playing in 12 games, 258 rushing attempts, 1,580 rushing yards, 19 receptions for 314 receiving yards, and 20 total touchdowns. The 19 reception number should not make you think that this guy has fucking butterfingers like his name is Derrick Henry. This guy is a legitimate threat at the running back position. He is a great pass catcher if given the opportunity. Now, it's hard to rank this guy any higher because we don't know the landing spot yet, but don't be shocked if Bijan Robinson ends up somewhere very good, and he might even crack even higher than number 9 in my future rankings. At number 10, we got Jonathan Taylor, JT, running back of the Indianapolis Colts. Now, a lot of people who drafted Jonathan Taylor last year probably think that it's absurd. They have been run amok by Jonathan Taylor, and they will not fucking touch this guy with a 10-foot pole inside the first round. But what I say is try to forget the past, try to forget last year, because last year he was abysmally bad. Last year he might have taken an L, but tonight he bounces back like his name was Big Sean. Running back 34.5 PPR, which is bad considering it was the number 1 overall pick. Running back 18.5 PPR points per game. Playing in 11 games, he had 192 carries, 17.5 per game, number 24, 861 rushing yards, 78.3 per game, number 22, 40 targets, 28 receptions, 143 receiving yards, and only 4 total touchdowns, number 41 at running back. So again, a down year for Jonathan Taylor, but there was a lot going on for the Indianapolis Colts. They end up firing their head coach. They end up bringing in a stooge to be the interim head coach, and everything goes wrong for Jonathan Taylor. But you have to remember, you have to hop back in the time machine and think about Jonathan Taylor in the past, and think about how skilled of a player is before you let what happened to you last season, before you let the PTSD of him burning you last season affect you. Just remember how fucking good he was and why you drafted him number 1 overall. This guy is incredibly legit. This Colts offense should look better. I think they're going to draft a new quarterback. This team is going to look much better than they did in 2022. At number 11, we got Devontae Adams, wide receiver of the Las Vegas Raiders. Wide receiver number 3 in half PPR. Wide receiver 4 in half PPR points per game, playing in 17 games last year. 180 targets, 10.6 per game. Number 2 at wide receiver, 100 receptions, 5.9 per game. Number 7 at wide receiver, 1,516 receiving yards, 89.2 per game. Number 3 at wide receiver, and 14 total touchdowns. Number 1 at wide receiver. Now, I know going from Derek Carr to Jimmy Garoppolo might be far from ideal. In reality, it's a pretty linear move, right? I talked about this, I think, in the mock draft I did yesterday. It's like that Spider-Man meme, you know, where Spider-Man's pointing at the other Spider-Man. It's like that. Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo pointing at each other. Again, I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is the best, but when Davante Adams is as good as he is, again, it's another one of these guys where it doesn't take you don't need Joe Burrow for Davante Adams to be amazing, right? You don't need the best quarterback in the NFL. At number 12, we got Saquon Barkley, running back of the New York Football Giants, running back 6.5 PPR, running back 5 in points per game, 16 games played, 295 carries. Number 4, running back 18.4 per game, 1,300 rushing yards, 82.0 per game. Number 4, 76 targets, 4.8 per game. Number 6, 57 receptions, 3.6 per game. Number 7, 338 receiving yards, 21.1 per game. Number 14 and 10 total touchdowns. Number 10 at running back. So while Saquon Barkley isn't necessarily Austin Eckler, Christian McCaffrey level of receiving value game in and game out, he's still going to be getting a decent amount of targets every single game. I know the Giants' offense isn't the sexiest. Their wide receiver core is pretty mid, probably worse than mid if I'm being honest with you. But we do know under Brian Daboll, this team wants to run the rock, establish the run. The Giants team took a huge leap up under Brian Daboll last season. Daboll, however the fuck you say that bald-headed man's name. I like Saquon. People were off of him last year, and that was wrong because he was great. And I think he's going to be great yet again in 2023. Number 13, this is where the wide receiver range really opens up to me, right? Because we know we like Justin Jefferson. We know we like Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill. We like Cooper Kupp. We like Diggs, right? But then, and we like Adams. But after that, it's like, who do we want to rank next? And I'm going to rip off a couple names because they're all right in a row here. CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jalen Waddle. If you put any of those guys at number 13 in these rankings, however I now, I'm not going to argue with you. Not going to argue with you at all. We're going to lean slightly with CeeDee Lamb, but that's just ever so slightly, just the tip. Like, if you want to make the argument, Nick, Amon-Ra is better than CeeDee Lamb for fantasy football. It's like you're arguing with a fucking wall because I could make that argument in August that I switch my opinion, right? They're very close for me. Wide receiver 6.5 PPR, wide receiver 8 in points per game, 17 games played, 156 targets, 9.2 per game. Number 4, 107 receptions, 6.3 per game. Number 4, 1,359 receiving yards, 79.9 per game. Number 6 and 9 total touchdowns. Number 4 at wide receiver. Dak Prescott had his ups, his downs. It was a roller coaster ride for this Dallas Cowboys team last season. They get rid of Zeke seemingly, although I've read reports that Zeke might just come back to the Dallas Cowboys, so we don't know about that. They bring in Brandon Cooks from the Texans, so there's some more competition for Lamb, but again, Lamb doesn't need 190 fucking targets to be successful. Gets around 150 again. Dak is able to stay healthy. He should be just fine for fantasy. I don't really, I can see a scenario where he's the wide receiver number 1, but I think the other guys ahead of him are much more likely to do that. So again, I like Lamb, but when I draft CeeDee Lamb, I am not as ecstatic as I would with the other wide receivers we discussed. At number 14, we got A.J. Brown, NFC East rival of CeeDee Lamb of the Eagles, wide receiver 5.5 PPR last year, wide receiver 7 in points per game, 17 games played, 146 targets, 8.6 per game. Number 8, 88 receptions, 5.2 per game. Number 11, 1,496 receiving yards, 88 per game. Number 4, and 11 total touchdowns. Number 2 at wide receiver. Obviously, A.J. Brown is in a system where they like to run the ball a decent amount, but ultimately Jalen Hurts took such a huge leap up in 2022 in terms of his passing as well that you're not going to want to just fade away from A.J. Brown because Jalen Hurts is the quarterback. There's a lot of jokes thrown at his expense for him being a running back, and sure, it is kind of funny, but ultimately, Jalen Hurts is really fucking good. So A.J. Brown should be just fine yet again. Just another guy that I like a lot. I think he's a great player. but he just doesn't crack the top 12 for me. At number 15, we got Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions. Wide receiver 8.5 PPR, wide receiver 10 in points per game. 16 games played, 146 targets, 9.1 per game. Number 8 at wide receiver, 106 receptions, 6.6 per game. Number 5 at wide receiver, 1,161 receiving yards, 72.6 per game. Number 10 and 6 total touchdowns. Number 20. I think we are going to see Jameson Williams develop more in this offense in 2023 and become the 1B to Amon-Ra St. Brown's 1A in this Detroit Lions offense. I know a lot of people like to throw stones, make jokes about Jared Goff, but Jared Goff proved to us last year and even the year prior that he is a much better quarterback than people give him credit for. Again, I'm not calling this guy the second coming of one of the best quarterbacks ever, but he is relatively solid. Dan Campbell has really turned this Detroit Lions team around, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is a clear focal point in this offense. I do see the upside with him. Again, he could be a top 5 guy, but just like with Lamb, Brown, Amon-Ra, right? We can kind of see you can see a path for them being top 5, but calling them top 5 to me, like saying this guy, he's going to be top 5 is a little crazy. When you're talking about A.J. Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jalen Waddle, these are receivers on teams that have 2 very competent wide receivers. At number 16, Jalen waddled away, waddle to the very next day. Bump, my guy, my Miami Dolphins. You can see the Miami Dolphins logo. You see Dan Marino back there a little bit. Wide receiver 7 in half PPR last year. Wide receiver 13 in points per game. 17 games played, 116 targets, 6.8 per game, number 24. 75 receptions, 4.4 per game, number 23. 1,356 receiving yards, 79.8 per game, number 7. And 8 total touchdowns, number 11 at wide receiver. Genuinely do believe that if Tua can stay healthy, this guy's ceiling is the moon. Him and Tyreek Hill are such a great tandem, in my opinion. They're the best wide receiver duo in the NFL, slightly ahead of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So I'm not trying to disrespect them because they're also amazing. Again, I think this offense is going to look better in the second year of Mike McDaniel. I think Tua, if he's able to stay healthy, this offense is going to flourish. Jalen Waddle had a lot of high points last season. Then when Tua got hurt, things kind of went downhill. So I think if Tua can stay healthy, man, I really like Jalen Waddle this season, but I don't think there's really a crazy drop-off from Waddle to this next player, who is Garrett Wilson of the New York Jumbo Jets. Now, the Jets are a team with quarterback confusion as well, because while Rodgers wants to go to the Jets, it seems like the two teams are kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum on trying to figure out what deal is going to occur. It seems like the Jets don't want to give up 2 first-round picks. It seems like the Packers want 2 first-round picks. Again, I'm saying this from afar. I'm not saying that this is clearly what's happening. It's just what it seems like when you read the tea leaves. Wide receiver 31 in points per game last year, tied with Hollywood Brown and McCole Hardman, who is now his teammate. McCole Hardman, 17 games played. This guy was fantastic, though. Let's be honest. 147 targets. Considering the quarterback play, he was fantastic. 8.6 per game, number 6 at wide receiver, 83 receptions, 4.9 per game. Number 16 at wide receiver, 1,103 receiving yards, 64.9 per game. Number 14 at wide receiver, and 4 total touchdowns, 37th. This man dealt with cool Joe Flacco, Magic Mike White, who's the best of them, and he also had to deal with Zach Wilson, right? Things were very bad. Bad news bears at the quarterback position for Garrett Wilson, and somehow, some way, he was still able to put up big game performances. Now imagine Lamar Jackson or Aaron Rodgers moseys on into town and becomes the quarterback of the Jets. Now there is still competition for targets. They have McCole Hardman now. They also brought in Allen the Lazard King Lazard. So it's not like Garrett Wilson's the only guy in the Jets. But come on, man. Come on, man. We saw how good he was last year. At number 18, we have Breece Hall, running back of the New York Jumbo Jets. 2 Jets back-to-back. This is definitely the first time I've ever had 2 Jets players ranked inside the top 24, and probably the first time in, I don't know, since fucking Joe Namath was there, that anyone, as if people were playing fantasy football back then. But you get what I mean, right? Like, who in their right mind is putting 2 Jets players in the top 24? This guy is. Running back, 42.5 PPR last year, running back 7 in points per game because he was hurt. 7 games played, 80 carries, 463 rushing yards, 66.1 per game, 32 targets, 4.6 per game, 19 receptions, 2.7 per game, 218 receiving yards, and 5 total touchdowns. Again, this is with garbage quarterback play. This is a Jets team going through the bumps, the bruises, the motions. The motion of the ocean. Now imagine when Rodgers shows up. Imagine how much better this Jets offense is going to be. They have a legit offensive line that seems to always get hurt, but if they could stay healthy again, that's another push towards Breece Hall. Breece Hall entering the year last year wasn't the clear workhorse back. They were using Michael Carter, right? So it wasn't just Breece Hall. Now Breece Hall is going to be the workhorse back. I know people, oh my God, Nick, you can't draft a guy coming off the injury. He was hurt so early on to the year that it doesn't faze me one bit. If he was hurt in the fucking Super Bowl or something, like the Jets making the Super Bowl, come on. But you get what I mean, right? If he got hurt that late in the season, then yeah, maybe I would panic. It was like week 7, week 8, something like that. Not really worried about Breece Hall. Number 19, we got Josh Jacobs of the Las Vegas Raiders, running back 3.5 PPR, running back 4 points per game, 17 games played, 30 carries, 20 per game. Number 2, at running back, 1,653 rushing yards, 97.2 per game. Number 1, 65 targets, 3.8 per game. Number 11, 53 receptions, 3.1 per game. Number 10, 400 receiving yards, 23.5 per game. Number 8, and 12 total touchdowns. Number 6, Josh Jacobs was a guy that I was way off on last year. I thought that Josh McDaniels, who was the new head coach for the team, was going to bring in a running back by committee system, which we are all too familiar with the New England Patriots, but Josh Jacobs was the clear workhorse back very early on. I don't think to start off the year he was fantastic. It took a couple of weeks, slow tease there, but yeah, he ended up balling out. Obviously, we all remember, comes back to the Raiders. Now, again, going from Carr to Jimmy Garoppolo isn't necessarily the best, but it is what it is. The team's going to continue to lean on Josh Jacobs' skill set. They're going to continue to feed the guy the rock. I don't necessarily think he'll be running back 3 at the end of the season. Top 5 finish, definitely in the cards, though. Problem is, the Raiders aren't good enough to just run Josh Jacobs into the dirt every game, but he did see more targets last year. It seems like the team wants to have him more involved in catching passes. So I'm a pretty big fan of Josh Jacobs. I think his skill set is elite. And again, while the Raiders, when you look at the team, you look at the Raiders logo, you're not like, this is a super sexy team, right? But I mean, Jacobs should still be just fine. And if you wanted to rank Jacobs ahead of Breece Hall, right? Like, I'm not going to argue with you. At number 20, we got 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, running back of the Cleveland Browns, RB 5.5 PPR, running back 6 in points per game, 17 games played, 302 carries, 17.8 per game. Number 3, at running back, 1,525 rushing yards, 89.7 per game. Number 3, 37 targets. Number 31, 27 receptions. Number 33, 239 receiving yards, 14.1 per game, number 24, and 13 total touchdowns, number 3. So when it came to Nick Chubb in the past, obviously, they had Kareem Hunt there. It doesn't seem like Kareem Hunt's going to be back. He is a free agent. That could increase Nick Chubb's receiving value, but we have seen in the past when Kareem Hunt was hurt that they didn't dump the ball off more to Nick Chubb. I have pretty strong beliefs that Deshaun Watson won't be as bad as last year, right? If he was that bad again and they backed up the Brinks truck to give him all that fucking money and he sucked that much ass yet again in 2023, that would be very bad for the Cleveland Browns, but would also be a very Cleveland Browns situation, right? Just a team that's like fucking cursed or something. But ultimately, again, Nick Chubb is a great player. He has been in the league for a decent amount of time at this point. Again, I'm not saying he's fucking ancient, but he's not super young anymore. He's still going to be a really good running back. He is going to get a bunch of carries. Hopefully his Browns team is better, and he could finish as a top 5 back yet again. In years past, I have been a little bit more hesitant to draft Nick Chubb because of his average draft position, but it seems like this year a lot of people have cooled down on Nick Chubb, when in reality we should be higher on Nick Chubb because of just how good he played last year. At number 21, can you do something for me? We got Chris Olave, wide receiver of the New Orleans Saints, wide receiver 25.5 PPR, 25 in points per game, tied with Debo. Now, I know we talked a little bit about Derek Carr and Jimmy Garoppolo, Spider-Man meme, right? But when it comes to Derek Carr versus fucking Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, Derek Carr is leaps and bounds miles ahead of Derek Carr. of Andy Dalton. So this is huge for Chris Olave. Had a solid rookie season. Wide receiver 25.5 PPR, 25 points per game, tied with Deebo Samuel. 15 games played, 119 targets, 7.9 per game, number 20. 72 receptions, 4.8 per game, number 26. 1,042 receiving yards, 69.5. 17 a wide receiver, and 4 total touchdowns, number 37. Honestly, I think if Jameis Winston played all year in 2022, Chris Olave would have been even better. He is the number 1 wide receiver on the team. Maybe Michael Thomas will be back. Who really fucking knows? But I'm a big fan of Chris Olave. He showed out in his rookie year. And again, while I don't love Derek Carr, you just, anyone with eyes, right? Anyone that can see knows that Andy Dalton is so bad. So bad. Number 22, we got Derrick Henry, the king of the Titans. As of right now, rumors are spreading around, circling around that he might be getting traded. Running back 4.5 PPR, running back 3 in points per game. 16 games played, 349 carries, 21.8 per game, number 1. 1,538 rushing yards, 96.1 per game, number 2. 41 targets, 2.6 per game, number 26. 33 receptions, 2.1 per game, number 25. 398 receiving yards, number 9. And 13 total touchdowns, number 3. Now, I would assume that if a team does trade for Derrick Henry, they're going to use him like a workhorse running back. They're going to feed the motherfucker the rock, and he's going to be fine. Right now, though, we're just going to assume he's on the Titans, I guess, for all intents and purposes. The Titans fucking stink. They reek, but they're going to give him the ball. They're going to continue to feed the guy the rock. And look, his yards per carry number has been going a little bit lower. Who gives a fuck? Even if it decreases slightly, the motherfucker is going to get 20 plus carries a game. He's going to get some more targets because it seems like he's a little bit better at catching the ball now. Probably going to score 10 plus touchdowns. Come on. You got to have him ranked as top 24. All these guys I like, that's the problem with top 24 lists is you can poke holes in all these guys. But ultimately, these are some of the best players. These are the best players, the best 24 players in the NFL on offense, except for quarterbacks, because I'm not ranking quarterbacks inside the top 24, because if you take a quarterback in the first 2 rounds, you're a little bit crazy, in my opinion. And number 23, we got Devontae Smith, wide receiver of the Eagles. Shout out Michael Jordan, number 23. Not fucking LeMickey. Wide receiver 9.5 PPR. Wide receiver 15 in points per game. Tied with Amari Cooper and Tyler Lockett in my pocket. Skirt. 17 games played, 136 targets, 8 per game. Number 13. 95 receptions, 5.6 per game. Number 9. 1,196 receiving yards, 70.4 per game. Number 8 at wide receiver and 7 total touchdowns. 14th at wide receiver. I want to make this an important note in the video. Fucking put one of those red thumbtacks in that thing. I like Devontae Smith significantly more than I like Kenneth Walker, who's number 24. Because I am very skeptical of Kenneth Walker, but when I was looking at the players that are ranked below Kenneth Walker, I thought it would be crazy to rank some of them over him. So, Devontae Smith of the Eagles, again, Jalen Hurts, not necessarily your prototypical pocket passer, but has a lot of legitimate skills. Devontae Smith, the Slim Reaper, the Heisman winner, the speedster, the guy that looks like he's built like fucking Kevin Durant, plays amazing. The Eagles are going to be an amazing team again, even if they're going to take a step down because they lost some players. It is what it is. Should still be great. Jalen Hurts, probably going to play just as good, even if slightly worse. He's still going to be just fine. So again, there's not many holes to poke into Devontae Smith, aside from the fact that he is teammates with A.J. Brown, and that just hurts his upside. At number 24, we got Kenneth Walker of the Seahawks, running back 16.5 PPR last year, running back 14 in points per game, tied with Ramondre Stevenson. 15 games played, 228 carries, 15.2 per game, number 11. 1,051 rushing yards, 70.1 per game, number 11. 35 targets, 34th. 27 receptions, 33rd. 165 receiving yards, 42nd, and 9 total tugs, 14th at running back. Going into last season, the fantasy season, I didn't love Kenneth Walker. I would notably Rashad Penny truther. I love Rashad Penny, and I thought Rashad Penny was going to be the starting running back on the team going into the year, which was true. But then Penny got hurt, and then Kenneth Walker fucking ascended, like that meme of Kanye. I want to go to the moon from Donda, where he's like fucking floating, or like one of those horror movies where the chick starts floating off the bed. Very scary. Kenneth Walker ascended straight to the fucking moon. The problem the problem is I wouldn't be shocked if they drafted another running back. Wouldn't shock me. So until the draft's over, I'm a little bit cautious on Kenneth Walker. I think the Seattle offense is also going to take a step down. I think Geno ran hot. I don't know he's going to be able to do that again. So again, not trying to shit on Kenneth Walker. I think he's a great player. I think if he's given that workhorse role again, he will succeed. So that's why he's number 24. But I'm just a little bit cautious, a little bit nervous right now. So thank you guys all so much for watching. Again, let me know down below in the comment section what you thought of the top 24. You love it? You hate it? Let me know. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're new, that like button as well. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great guys day. And as always, we'll be back soon with another video. I try to post every day, Monday through Friday. But again, we're still in that dead season, as I might say, where, you know, there's not as much to talk about because training camp hasn't started yet. The draft hasn't happened yet. Free agency's going on, so that's fun to talk about and all. But, you know, we're just going to keep on pushing. And obviously, once we get to the summer, videos every single day. Might even be days where there's multiple videos. So I love you guys, genuinely. Hope you guys all have a great day. We're going to continue to move on. We're going to hit 30,000 subscribers. I believe in it. We're going to hit 30,000 subscribers. And I'm going to love it. And I love you. Because without you guys, you know, while I love doing this is all fun. Fun for me. None of this is possible without you guys. So I really appreciate you guys. I always try to make sure at the end of the video I tell you guys that because I think it's important because, you know, I want you guys to know that without you, this doesn't happen. So I love you guys. I really do. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.